So yeah, I think the Lions do win the Super Bowl this year. You look at they've really quietly stacked depth, and I love the uh, the move that shows how good the Lions scouting department is that move getting Zach Cunningham. It's just like I was telling my buddy about this. Like that's such the if you're a good scout, that is just a move. Getting a guy like Zach Cunningham is just such a perfect move if you're a good scouting department, like Brad Holmes and the Lions guy. Because Zach Cunningham, kind of a guy that's fizzled out, but you look at he had some really great years in Houston, a really high level player, tackling machine. I think he actually led. I was telling people this. I think he led the league in tackles one year. So. But yeah, I think the Lions win the Super Bowl just because they're just quietly stacking depth. And you look at last year, like my buddy and I were also talking about this. Yes, the injuries hurt him, or yes, they had so many injuries, and like even though they had good depth and exposed them, but like that, even if you had poor, like no one could overcome that amount of injuries they had last year. So I think the Lions this year, I think a lot of people talk about this like there's a guy that writes college football. He talks about sometimes if a team has poor luck one year, usually the next year they kind of shift that becomes in their favor. So I think this year the Lions like luck kind of becomes in their favor. Now it's kind of hard to project, getting luck in any given season, but I think, if you have a season like that where it is, quote unquote unlucky with all those injuries, I think in the next season, I think you kind of bounce back and are more fortunate. So I think the Lions, with the more depth they have this year on defense and the more depth they have on offense, I think more. I think that they will not have that amount of injury. So I think the Lions do win the Super Bowl this year. But yeah, I like the Zach Cunningham move. A lot of people like Isaac Tesla. If you talk to any Lions fan, there's so many buzz around that guy. Interesting story. At Unity Christian High School over by Grand Rapids, was a option quarterback. Then he goes to Hillsdale College, lights it up at Hillsdale. The numbers not necessarily there at Arkansas, but yeah, you saw. I mean, what was he, 19, 20 yards per catch? You saw when this guy gets the ball in his hands, he can make some things happen. So yeah, I really like Isaac Tesla, Dominic Lovett. You saw they really went after some guys from Georgia, Tate Rutledge. Yeah, Lovett, the receiver, Tate Rutledge. So yeah, I mean the Lions in a position where they could be really good. And yeah, this Lions team, I don't know. It's interesting to compare this Lions team to last year's Lions team, because I feel like last year's team, I don't know. Last year's team felt like, I guess there was the argument their rookies did not perform not particularly well. But you look at, a lot of the rookies they drafted weren't asked to play a whole lot. You saw Mahogany fill in and do some nice things. Terrion Arnold, a good player, played well. But this year you're like, okay, you're going to have guys back from injury, including Hutchinson, McNeil. You're going to have Anzalone back for the full season. So you're thinking like, okay, this team, Ragnow retired as well. So, you're without Ragnow, and you're thinking, okay, we may not be as good just because, Hutchinson might not be 100%. There's you could easily go down the road to being pessimistic for this team. But you could also be like, okay, we'll probably, this year if we avoid the injury bug, the depth at receiver, the young talent on the offensive line, and just the defensive line, continuing to get better, and then the defense continuing to get better, and now just now you have kind of a feeling of like this is more of a veteran team like that. That's what's interesting. A couple years ago, when the Lions made that run against the Niners, you feel like the Lions still were they were a really talented team, but a lot of those guys from that 23 draft class, it was several rookies. Laporta, like everyone talks about that class with Laporta, Branch, Jahmyr Gibbs, all those guys were young. Now Brian Branch, Laporta, what is this year? 23. Now it's year 3 of those guys. Now guys like Sewell, what is Sewell now? 21, 22, 23, Now, what is Sewell quietly year? Is this his 5th year in the league? 4th year in the league? Yeah, 5th year in the league. So now quietly, some of these guys that Brad Holmes, Campbell, this organization have drafted quietly becoming now veteran players. So now this has become you're not being talked about as kind of the young talented team. Now you're talking about more of a veteran team with depth on offense. Depth at receiver. Yeah, I'm excited that the Lions are coming into a season with talent at receiver and depth at receiver. I think they haven't really had this per se. You have to go back a long ways when they've had depth and talent at wide receiver. I can't even remember. Now you're talking about a year where you got 2 difference makers. One definitely established difference maker in Amon-Ra St. Brown. Another guy, Jameson Williams. And then you have behind him, and then you have Isaac Tesla and Dominique Lovett. I think Lovett should make the roster, but we'll see. So a lot of excitement for the Lions. Really looking forward to it. And I do think they win the Super Bowl. And I think this defense, if the Lions are healthy, this defense could be phenomenal. Like, I think they could make that jump into a top 5 defense. And the Lions, arguably the best roster in the NFL. I think what's really reassuring, I don't think there's anyone that would say the Lions are not at least a top 3 roster, at the very, very least a top 5. I don't think there's anyone that would argue that this isn't a top 3 roster. Arguably, I think a lot of people would say best roster or second best roster, but at the very, very least, I wouldn't say top 5. I would say at the very least this is a top 3 roster. So I think the Lions get it done this year. I think this team looks a lot like the 2023 team, except there is more of that veteran presence now. Guys like Brian Branch, Jahmyr Gibbs, Laporta. These are veteran players now. So I'm excited for the Lions. I think they get it done, and hopefully avoid the injury bug. I think this team looks more like the 23 team, and then I think maybe you see guys like it. I think it could be similar to the 23 team in the sense where, obviously, they would need to win the NFC Championship this time around, but I think you'll see guys like Tesla, Lovett, and Rutledge. Some of these rookie class establish themselves in a way. Really have really nice seasons, similar to Laporta, Brian Branch, and Jahmyr Gibbs, the way they had that impact right away.